All creatures great and small. And now he's a doctor. I'll be honest with you, you were the first doctor that I ever really wondered what went on in the TARDIS after the adventure. Never cared before.
Yeah.
Never cared before.
The producer was worried about that too. he would. I wasn't allowed to put my arm around the female companions.
Interesting.
I could put my arm around the male companion, oddly enough, but not the female companion, because he was terribly worried that people would think there was hanky-panky going on in the TARDIS.
He is correct. Some of us weren't worried about it. We were like convinced and hoping that there was some sort of hanky-panky going on in the TARDIS. But what was your experience? We've had people that, you've joined us before. We'd have people that's joined us before, but we like to have you go ahead and share what your experience was like when you're going, wait, this is what I'm going to do next, especially since you were, one of a fan of the show before they cast you.
Yeah. I never you mean, what did I sort of plan ahead my career? No, not at all. I've never done that. I've always just sat around, and very fortunately, and I acknowledge I've been very fortunate, jobs would just come my way. For example, Doctor Who came out of my doing All Creatures. Mm-hmm. John Nathan Turner, for a while at the beginning of All Creatures, worked on that series as a production unit manager, and then he left because he got the job of producing Doctor Who, and that was it. We got on very well, and I said bye, and off he went. And then when I finished All Creatures, the initial 3 years of All Creatures, and we thought that would be it, we all went off and did different things, and I did a comedy series or two. And then the phone rang one night, and it was John asking me if I wanted to be the next Doctor. Mm-hmm. So it was there was no planning. I wish, I wish there had been, really, but it sounds more impressive. But it was literally.
You're I manifested it.
I was kind of just happened to be in the right place at the right time, on quite a few occasions. So I was blessed in that way.
So when you got that phone call, was your initial response like shock and amazement and awe, or like, oh my gosh, what do I do now?
It was both those things, okay. Shock and amazement, because it was I was the first actor, I guess, who'd grown up watching Doctor Who, and since I'd become an actor, I'd often thought it would be nice to play a part in Doctor Who, like sort of villain or an alien or something like that, and so to suddenly be actually offered the part of the Doctor was beyond my comprehension for a while, because they were older actors, William Hartnell, Patrick Troughton, John Pertwee, and Tom, not quite so old, but still much older than me. So I just felt, why on earth would they want me to do it?
So how did they sell you on it and go, well, no, you're what we want to do next with this character?
Well, it's an offer. I said this yesterday. It's an offer you can't refuse, really, because I was trepidatious about it, because my career was going very well without Doctor Who. I was getting job offers very, very often, and this I knew held risks, Doctor Who, because Tom had done it for 7 years, and I think he realised that it was going to affect his employment possibilities, because once you become identified with this one particular character. But I still thought, I can't really turn this down. Right. Part of the reason, this is a really silly reason, but when you get offered a great role and you turn it down, you can't really go around saying, oh, I was offered that first, I was offered it before, that bloke who went. So I realised that if I turned it down, I could never tell anyone that I'd been offered it. So I thought, well, I've got to do it then, haven't I? So anyway, he took me for lunch, famously took me for lunch, and I was going to ask, I had a list of questions that I'd written out to ask him about how he saw my character, and what say I would have in the stories, and he just got me a bit drunk, and so by the time dessert came up, I just said, oh yeah, I'll do it. And that was it.
So anywhere in the first season did you have that, oh no, I should have said no moment?
No, not until the end of the first. I would say the end of the first season, when budgetary limitations became apparent.
Right.
But no, the first season, I loved it. I think Tom had become fatigued with the role, and I think he's admitted he should have left before that because his heart just wasn't in it anymore, and therefore he had been a fairly, shall we say, grumpy presence on the set for a while, and I absolutely understand that. They're doing it for 7 years, and so with my beautifully assembled 3 companions, I was a breath of fresh air in terms of, because I wanted to make it an ensemble group, although I was the doctor.
Right.
And inevitably, the companions have a raw deal. They're not really well written.
And you've mentioned that before about one of your concerns about our legacy Who, is that they didn't do justice to a lot of the companions.
Well, I knew that was a problem. And Janet, if she was here now, would be saying, yes, who's your favorite companion? Because I've said before, I don't think they got the companions right until Rose.
Okay.
Until Billy Piper. Really. That was the first time that the companion really had a huge part of the show.
Right.
You saw the new Doctor through the
companion's
character,
eyes.
and that's what they should have done before, really. But inevitably, the companions were there to get into trouble and for me to rescue them, and we'd all live happily ever after till next week.
Until the next week. For a very brief period of time, even in a timey-wimey episode. All right, we'll go with our first question to our friends in the audience. Go ahead.
Hi, I was just wondering if you could talk about your time on Call the Midwife. I really liked your episode.
Oh, really? That Call the Midwife, that was the first thing that I'd done post-COVID. And indeed, it was done during COVID, so the full regulations were there. And I don't want to spoil the story for you, but they literally had a 6-foot-long stick, because the regulations were no one could get closer to someone than 6 feet. So they literally had this stick, and if I was doing a scene with someone was there, the person who'd been employed to do this particular job. They would step in and place the stick between us to make sure we were assigned 6 feet between us.
Safety first.
Safety first, yeah. Kind of. We were stuck inside rooms and things like that, so I don't know how far your breath gets. But they come in with this stick, and it caused, at one point, I think my daughter gives birth. I think it was I was holding the baby. It wasn't, sure, a real baby I was holding, but I was holding the baby, and then I had to hand the baby to the midwife. Well, the only way I could do this was by reaching out with my hand like that, and then going.
Chuck it and catch.
So we were literally chucking this baby around this room, and then they had to cut the middle bits out, so it looked like I was just handing her the baby.
Not them catching it like a rugby ball and taking off.
And it was kind of mad, and because of that, you couldn't rehearse anything with all the props, so that I smoked a cigarette in it as the sort of this tired old fair owner, circus owner, and they wouldn't let me have the cigarette until we did the take. Well, that makes it quite complicated because you are sort of inhaling these awful herbal cigarettes while you're trying to talk to the person, so you just end up spluttering and coughing because you haven't had time to go through it and figure out when it's going to, you don't realize the effect it's going to have.
Right.
So all those things, it was a difficult circumstance in which to make the program, put it like that. But I think it did turn out very well. Just shows you what a good editor can do, really.
Right. Fabulous. All right. Do we want to go to our virtual visitor, and then we'll come back into the room?
Hello.
Hi. Question from online. What do you think about David Tennant becoming your son-in-law?
Oh! You said we could ask anything. You should have.
What do I think? I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think I should do it.
Nothing but trouble.
No, yeah, it's nothing but trouble. Stop it right now. I think it's a bit too late, isn't it? Anyway, no, it was very good. It was. I don't know if I had a sort of thought about this. Maybe it was a fantasy that David would come along and take Georgia off my hands. But when she got this part, she rang me up. She said, "Oh, I'm going up for a part in Doctor Who," and I said, "Oh, that's great. And so she went up for this part, and they said, we can offer you this part now, or if you wait for a couple of months, there's a much nicer part coming along we'd like you to play." Mm-hmm. So she rang me up and said, what do I do? And I said, well, I suppose you have to trust them, that if it's a nicer part, just hang on for 2 months, mm-hmm. and they'll offer you the part. Well, when it came along, this part, the episode was called The Doctor's Daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I thought to myself, it's not necessarily a better part, it's just a better title.
Right.
Because she is the Doctor's daughter, and they've roped her in to play the Doctor's daughter.
You're like, clever.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, she started doing the episode. I said, how is it going? And she said, oh, yeah, it's going okay. I said, how are you getting on with David Tennant? She said, yes, all right, yes, it's good. Anyway, then, but nothing, and I have to take a word for this. I said this yesterday, but if anyone was here, I'm sorry to repeat myself. But so nothing was going on when they were doing the series. But after she'd left the series, he got her number and rang up and said, would you like to go to the theatre? And so Georgia's not really a tremendous theatre person, really. I think she has a low boredom level. So he so this happened about 3 or 4 times. He would ring her up and say, take me to the theatre. I'd say, will you come with me to the theatre? And she'd go. And then I said, so what happens? He said, well, he just takes me home and drops me off. And I said, really, is that true? He said, yeah, no, I don't understand it. Anyway, so but eventually, anyway, so what I'm saying really is he was a fine gentleman about it. He courted her for a long time.
Did she ever tell him, I hate the theater?
Hate the what?
I hate the theater. Did she ever tell him?
I think she did.
Okay.
No, she doesn't hold
like,
back.
let's do
Georgia.
something else.
No, I think he would ring her up and go, I want to take you to this Shakespeare play. And she'd go, how long is it? Anyway, but it was in the end, it was a very sweet, I thought, romance. So it was great.
That is beautiful. All right, our friend at the microphone in the room.
Yeah, hi. So you worked with so many notable and fun companions. I was wondering if there are any companions before or after your tenure that you wish you could have performed with?
Well, I suppose the aforementioned Rose. Really, I mean, I do love Billie Piper. What Billie Piper does in virtually everything she does. Well, everything she does really. And it was this. I did have this idea. When there was one point, there was a sequel to the Five-ish Doctors Muted, mm-hmm. And I was thinking about what to do in it, and one thing I came up with was that I just wanted to work with Billie Piper. That was so that I would decide we're going to make a sequel to the Five-ish Doctors, and the first thing I'm doing is I'm going to audition people for it. And I wrote this scene, which I thought was quite good. Of course, never happened, but it was just Billie Piper turning up to do an audition. I'm taking the audition, and she's getting a bit frustrated with me because I'm just sort of sitting there. And she goes, well, what do you want me to do in this film? And I just say, well, just stand there, actually. And I've met her at conventions and things like that. She's very nice.
Lovely.
But I can't say that. Can I just say I'm going to get into terrible trouble with Janet Fielding for even mentioning that. And I do love my companions dearly, and they were absolutely terrific.
Yes.
I always love the way that the name of Janet Fielding is like cracking a whip to all of the Doctor Who actors. Well, like, you shan't,
it's me particularly, and were it not for Sarah Sutton, who keeps the peace really between us.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's all banter. Can I
Right.
say it's all banter? But there is a kind of thing when we do a convention together, we just end up shouting at each other.
It's lovely, lovely. Thank you. All right, lovely hat friend. Come on up to the microphone.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I am not well composed. Unlike you, Peter. I just had a question about Colin. When you found out that Colin Baker, who you previously worked with in an episode where, I can't remember his name, he was like this mean guy.
Yeah.
When you found out that he would be succeeding you as the Doctor, what was your reaction?
I thought he was really sneaky. No, he was great, Colin. I think after I said told John I was leaving, I was hanging around in Shepherd's Bush, which is where the offices were, and I went to the pub, and John Nathan Turner was sitting there with Colin Baker, so I could see this coming. And of course, the thing is, Colin was like a blonde version of John Nathan Turner. You know, if you look at they both had the bushy curls at that time, and except John's were dark. But no, it was I was fine. I was fine with it. But I did hear a radio broadcast of Colin, and I'm sure I did a very similar thing before I started out. But he was being interviewed about what he was going to do when he took over as Doctor Who. And the plans were, we're going to do this, and we want to make this much more so-and-so. And I just was sitting there in my car thinking, just you wait, Colin. Just you wait till you're in that studio, and it gets to 5 to 10, and you've got 2 scenes to do in 5 minutes. Let's see how many of these plans come to fruition.
You're like, I remember those days. Thank you, friend. We'll go ahead and keep going. Step on up. Nice case.
Thank you. So, how long does it typically take to record the Big Finish projects you do?
It traditionally takes, I think we do it over the course of 2 days.
Okay.
Yeah, unless it's a short one. The standard length is 2 days in the studio. Or during COVID, it's 2 days in the cupboard under the stairs.
Yeah, I record audios and they usually take me about 5 hours. So
The what?
I record audios and they usually take about 5 hours
5
to record
hours.
them,
Well,
all my lines.
yeah, for some reason, how long is the end thing?
Well, usually they're only about 30 minutes, but
Oh, right.
I record the lines multiple times to make sure I get them right.
Oh,
and-
okay.
and-
Okay. Yeah, so it's roughly the same sort of timing, I think,
Yeah.
with these things. 2 days, you can knock off 4, so it's a 2-hour piece in 2 days.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So when you're doing it from a voice actor perspective, like what's your process to make sure that you have your vocal health and the stamina that you need to go through a longer recording process like that?
This is a weird thing. I started to read the scripts beforehand, but then I discovered I thought I got worse when I read the scripts.
Really?
Yeah, so I now just dive in, full tilt without any, and I seem to, walking the tightrope, I'm talking now with a script in front of you. It would be entirely different if I was learning the script.
Right.
But in terms of the script, you have the words there, and somehow, very often the first take is the best take. When you don't even quite know what you're talking about, but
Right.
somehow the adrenaline is flowing through there. And
Does it feel more authentic, you think?
yeah,
Okay.
I think, so there's the danger with radio is, in Britain there's a lot of radio drama on the BBC radio stations, and the danger is that you fall into a style of audio acting,
Okay.
which is just a bit too expressive. It's not realistic. And you do that because you think, I've got to make up for the fact that no one can see me, and therefore you start using your voice to do that in ways that you don't need to, actually. I think the style of radio acting has changed a lot over the years, as indeed has television acting and film acting. So I just find it works best for me if I just dive in and dash through to keep my energy levels up.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you. Yes, friend.
Okay, going into the idea of multi-skilled acting, I mentioned yesterday in the elevator in passing, I grew up watching All Creatures Great and Small as a part of my childhood, and recently reviewed episodes during COVID, and I realized it looks like you're actually doing a certain amount of animal veterinarianism.
Yes.
How much was involved? And I mean, there was support information in there as well.
Pretty much everything was involved. You sadly can't do it now. So they've recently remade the series, and now yet they're not allowed to do any of the stuff that we did, the hands-on animal stuff. I'm not sure why that is. It's not for our benefit. I think it's for they felt it would be making the animals uncomfortable. But we never did anything to do that. I mean, we were simply doing. So we had 2 vets in the studio. We had a vet, and on the set outside we had a vet, and they would very often say, "Okay, I've got this cow with this very thing that's wrong with it in the program." So we'd actually do that, and they'd go, "This is what you do." And now, nowadays, when we were making it, even in the 70s, farmers spend vets spend an awful lot of their time with their arms up cows.
Yeah.
That's just the reality of it. It seems to me the first thing they think to do. So by that time, they had rubber gloves. But in the years we were making it, in the period we were making it, you didn't have that. So you literally had a pail of water, a soap, and you sort of soaped your arm up, and then you put your arm up the cow. And then they would go, "Can you feel the legs of the calf?" Right, pull really hard. So we would be delivering calves, and
Wow.
and of course it was great because it was absolutely authentic. It was a bit squeamish watching it, but it was absolutely, that's why you thought it was real, because it was real. I have to say,
That's what makes you a good actor. They showed you twice, and you're like, "Oh, it's my turn."
you just
Yank away.
just do it. I remember the first time I had to do the arm up the cow business. I thought, this is going to be terrible. I was worried. I was anxious about it because, Chris Timothy had already done it, so I have to go in and do it, and you're stripped to the waist. You've got a soaped arm up the cow, and I remember thinking, my arm is the only warm part of my body. It was freezing cold. You're up on the top of the hills, in early spring, and literally it's so freezing. My arm is really cozy.
You're like, "Thank goodness for this cow."
But so I thought it was a great part of the show and the vets were they got into it. So sometimes in the studio, they would say, "If you change the animal here that you're operating on to a cat, I've got a cat that needs operating on. So I can do the operation out in his portable vet van out the front of the studios, and then you can bring it in," and he would say to Chris and I, "and you can stitch it up." So, without any knowledge of what we were doing. I think it was Chris that was doing that mostly. But we were stitching up this cat that had been operated on. And I thought, "Oh, Lord, this is reality television."
So what other skills do you have besides acting? Thank you.
Stitching up cats. Thank you. All right, we're going to go to our another virtual question, then we'll come back in the room.
Did you enjoy being the dish of the day on Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Yes, I did.
There we go.
It was. I love that series on the radio. It was a radio show, first of all, in Britain. And when they went to make it into a TV series, they did actually check me out for one of the parts. But I think they made absolutely the right decision to go with the original cast on the radio. But I was desperate to have a part in it, and my then wife got a part of Trillian in it, and she was they were rehearsing one day, and she overheard this conversation in which Douglas Adams said to the director, "What we need is for this part is someone who's well known but who doesn't mind being completely unrecognizable." And she then said, "Oh, Peter will do it." So that's how I came to be the dish of the day. And I think I was about think it was 2 hours in makeup, 5 minutes on the set, and that was it. That was it.
Well, speaking of Douglas Adams, and then we'll come back in the room, I did have a question about when you were playing the Doctor. I mean, as someone who a lot of us have seen other interviews with you and other things that you played, you're such a funny actor and person. Were you a little disappointed that they kind of had dampened the humor out of the character by the time it got to you compared to how humorous a lot of like Tom's scenes and episodes were?
I think it was. They went through a period, oddly enough, with Douglas Adams when he was script editor with Tom, where it did go very undergraduate, what they call undergraduate humor. And I kind of enjoyed that, but I think it went against the elements of danger in the show, so it wasn't entirely good. So I think it was quite good that they pulled back a bit from the silliness of it.
Okay.
But I was always trying to get the funny bits in. And we'd have this end of the week's rehearsal, we'd have what they call a producer's run. And John Nathan Turner would come in and try and cut out all the jokes, all the jokes we'd put in. But we got a few through. But you're right, it was a little, it probably pulled back a bit too much from that. I would love to have put a bit more in. There were, but we just couldn't put it in the show. He wouldn't let us. Yeah, you're right. Just one thought, just going back to that previous question about the dish of the day. In that episode that I was in, Restaurant at the End of the Universe, we had Dave Prowse. Dave Prowse, who was Darth Vader, as I'm sure all of you know, and who told me this tragic story about how no one told him they weren't going to use his voice. He was invited to the premiere. He didn't know, he said, when he went to the premiere, that he was not the voice. Because he'd been filming the entire Star Wars, doing the lines. Now, unfortunately, he had this West Country voice. So, you can't imagine Darth Vader talking like that. So, and he wasn't really an actor, so he could do an American accent or anything like that. But he was telling me these stories at the same time as I was figuring out what kind of voice can I use for the dish of the day. And he was telling me this story, and I thought, that's the voice. So I just copied Dave Prowse. So the dish of the day was, in fact, my impersonation of Dave Prowse, really being Darth Vader.
Yes, friend.
So two things. First of all, I wanted to say thank you for all of the work you've done with recording commentaries on some of your Doctor Who episodes. A lot of times, commentary tracks can be very dry or whatever. One of the funniest pieces of media I've experienced is the commentary track that you and Nicola and the director did on Caves of Androzani.
Oh, right, okay.
It was hilarious, so thank you for that. The question I was going to ask is actually related to the multi-talented thing. You've done a lot of period drama that involves, frankly, driving cars.
Yeah.
And I know that for a lot of driving scenes in film, they're just rigged so that the camera's rigged and you don't really have to do anything. Have you ever had to drive the period vehicles for a role?
Oh, yes.
If you have, do you have a favorite?
Oh, the Lagonda in Campion is my favorite. Because
Fantastic.
they bought the car. It's an Aston Martin Lagonda we used in that series, and they bought the car for the series, and they sent me out on the first day. I wasn't involved in the first day shooting. They said, go out in the countryside and learn to drive this car.
Sweet.
Now, it was obviously a stick shift, but it was also pre-synchromesh, which means it had what they call a crash gearbox. So you had to have the revs in exactly the right place to get it from one gear to another. And if you didn't, it made the most ghastly grunching noise. And they told me when I went out that they quite a few of the takes they were doing were ruined by, in the distance, this car driving down these roads. Because I couldn't quite get it into gear. But once you master it, you have this enormous sense of achievement that you've driven this car and managed to change gear successfully. So there were odd occasions when we were on what they call low loaders, but they were actually fairly. I don't think we ever did it in Campion. They also would sometimes literally stick a camera on the bonnet or on the side. and so you couldn't see where the hell you were going. You were just driving, thinking,
You're like, drive and
I
act.
really hope I don't hit anything.
So you're singing "The Sun Has Got Its Hat On" and
Yeah, that's
hoping for the
right.
best.
That's right. Yeah, I'm literally, and I'm looking actually almost just to the right of the camera lens, but I can't see anything because the camera's quite big. So we did that. Right? There are other shows where we've done low loader shots, but they're a nightmare, low loader shots, because you can't turn around. You know, the thing is too big, and it takes forever to do them. So it's much better if you're actually driving the car.
I really appreciate you asking that question, because you've got to hang out with the actual cars. You actually got to hang out with the actual cats and cows. And then you get to Doctor Who and they're like, we don't have the budget. That must have been very frustrating, Peter.
Well, the budgetary problems were general across the BBC, but Doctor Who was specifically very bad because it'd been going so long. The way their budgetary system worked was, Doctor Who was a successful program, right? And so their idea was, if you were successful on this amount of money for your budget last year, you can be just as successful next year with less than that. It wasn't like, if you did well, we'll give you more money. It was, if you did well, we'll give you less money, because people are going to watch it anyway, and so you don't need all that money to spend. But the money's, as you can see from the program, the budget wasn't big to begin with. So.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you. Yes, Doctor.
So my question is, you get out of Doctor Who, and then you're like kind of just an actor again. You're not the Doctor. What is that period of the couple years after playing the Doctor like? Is it a weird adjustment period? Is it freeing? Like, what's the energy like?
I was very fortunate. I went up for something shortly after I left Doctor Who. I was worried about it because I'd done it for 3 years.
Yeah.
And I was quite prominent in visibility as the Doctor. And I went up for this series called Anna of the Five Towns, which is a fairly small BBC program, classic series, period piece. And eventually they offered it to me, but I only found out afterwards that they'd had big conversations about whether they should offer it to me because I'd been the Doctor. Because I'd been this,
Right.
and would people just watch me and go, oh, he's just... So to make up for that, they dyed my hair, permed it,
Yeah.
and gave me a moustache as well. So hopefully they thought people wouldn't recognize me. I don't know if that worked or not.
They almost were like, just use a different name. Could you use a different name
Yeah, I
and
could use a
pretend?
different name. But I was fortunate. I was looking... I was anxious about the next year after I left, because I thought I might find it difficult. But fortunately, that kind of broke the spell. And then the parts just seemed to come in.
So it wasn't hard to switch gears into a new role? Just
Oh, no, it was
Okay.
great.
Okay.
It was great. It was so different. It was more... Doctor Who is great fun. It's not necessarily like acting. There's a lot of things you're waiting around for to... they're playing with certain green screens or whatever it is, and a lot of running up and down corridors and running away from rubber monsters that can't move very fast. So and I enjoyed it immensely. It was great fun. I was saving the universe every week. But it was nice to go back to something that was a really good script with a great director on Anna of the Five Towns. So it was nice to get back into that and feel, almost like you'd taken a step backwards, I suppose. And yet it was, I knew that would be my career in the future without Doctor Who, I thought. But of course then, Doctor Who comes back into your life, and
Yeah.
you don't turn away from it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. That's interesting. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. And I'm sorry, everybody. I have an indulgence. My mom is the one that got me to watch Doctor Who, and so I told her today that I was going to talk to you. So she texted a question to me, and it falls in line with what we're kind of on here. So feel free. I said, Mom, I'm talking to Peter Davison today. Do you want me to ask him anything? And her response was, sure. Ask him if there was ever a character other than Doctor Who that after he finished with the role ever took him some time to get it out of his mind. Because my mom is deep.
Yeah, she's deep.
My mom is deep, see?
I graduated eventually into playing some nasty characters. or unpleasant
Right.
characters. And I never really thought about it. When I'm going along nicely playing nice characters. I didn't really never really bought into that idea that you brought those characters home with you.
Right.
But as recently as 2019, I did this series called Life, where I played this rather unpleasant husband. And I found that I was bringing that character home with me. So, you have to you have to sort of shed that and try and, it might just be that I was getting old and grumpy anyway, of course. So I don't know, but I definitely found that, because part of the problem when you're playing those characters is, you have to like them.
Okay.
They might be unpleasant. So this man would crush his wife. His wife would sort of make a joke, and he'd just sort of flatten her and say she was not talking nonsense. She was always bad at everything. Right. And so, but the nature of playing that character was I had to find a way to like that character and to understand why he was like that. And I suppose in a way, because I was getting on then as well myself, it was only 2020. I felt like I was bringing it home.
So your empathy for the character, got internalized a little.
Internalized, and you kind of think I suppose you're making excuses for him in order to play the character, and at the same time you're making excuses for yourself at home when you say things like, why have you bought that? we didn't need that. So whatever it is, it wasn't not really bad stuff, but just I just felt I was becoming a bit grumpier.
So what was your process to shed that? How did you?
Well, I think COVID sorted that out for me.
Okay. Fair enough.
We just stayed at home for the next year and a half and sat around and
work on your attitude. Just sit at home and work on your attitude. A lot of us were doing that though, Peter. So thank you, friend. Yes.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for coming to Minneapolis. One of my favorite scenes from your tenure was the regeneration scene, Caves of Androzani.
Right, yes.
What was that like filming that? And it's such a dark scene. I'm kind of wondering what you went through.
The whole regeneration thing is that particular scene, and please, I do not mean this in any criticism of Nicola at all, but I had to, part of the way it was shot was I had to carry her across this sort of quite a long shot, as I remember, up to the doors of the TARDIS. But I had to keep doing it because things kept, for filming reasons. So by the time I was doing it for the fourth or fifth time, it was becoming quite hard to do. and I think the actual shot they use, which is the only time we got it right, I arrived outside the TARDIS, and I couldn't hold on to her any longer. I dropped her on the floor. If you look very carefully, you can see her fall out of my arms and hit the floor. Or you hear the bang, I think, as she hits the floor. So I felt bad about that. But it was just, the nature of the thing was we just had to do it too many times. I'm a relatively strong person, but,
But it looks,
just that.
I feel like that. The mean side of me is like, they're like, just do it again, because eventually it'll look really authentic that he's going to die.
That's probably
Just keep doing it until he looks like he's going to die.
Yeah, yeah.
He looks too strong and fit now. Carry her again,
and
Peter.
indeed, that's what it did look like.
Exactly.
But, if it would
to
be...
us, I'm like, yeah, he is dying. It's not that she's heavy. He's just weak.
Yeah.
So
If we'd had the budget, in films when they do that, they give the actor a kind of, it's a sort of like an L brace thing that the actress or man, whoever he's carrying, will just lie on, and that's taking all the weight. Well, I didn't have any of that because we couldn't have the budget to build a piece of wood that would be a bracket. So I was carrying her. So anyway, in the end, you're right. I think I looked like I was about to die. I dropped her outside of the TARDIS, and she hit the ground with a bang.
And they're like, that's one.
But the actual regeneration process, I think, is quite interesting because, and I know this from talking to David about the same thing, and other doctors as well. You make the decision to leave the program. And you're happy with that decision. You feel you've done it enough. I've done it for 3 years. It's time to move on. And then come the day that you're actually filming it, I think some part of your brain thought they can't really ever replace me, surely. There's no one else who's going to do this. He's not really going to take over. So I'm filming it. I lie on the floor, Nicola's leaning over me, and then then Colin comes in and lies there in my place. They lock off the shot, and suddenly you realize, I'm not the doctor anymore. Yeah. Some other bugger is now the doctor, and suddenly it's like the king is dead, long live the king. You know that thing with So you've been the king, now you're out the door, right? Here's your costume, now go away. Colin's now the doctor.
Is it like losing a friend? It's like losing a friend or a loved one.
It's just you can't quite believe that it's happened. So while you were perfectly happy with it, you then almost change your mind. You think if and I think David said the same. It's almost like if at that moment they said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" He would have said, "Actually, no, I'm not. I'd like to carry on, please." And there's that element in your head. How dare this person now be the doctor?
Right.
I've been doing this for 3 years. They're my companions. What's going on?
Yeah.
So all that comes into it. Anyway, it's an interesting process. Mm-hmm. It's a bit traumatic, is what I'm saying. The actual day you film it.
Ace.
Hi. Speaking of what you're talking about before about how, Colin Baker had been on the show previously and then came to be the doctor. Yeah. Can you conceive of a part or a storyline in your head where you would like to do the reverse and now, maybe dye your hair and give you a mustache again and come back as like a different...
In Doctor Who?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm open to offers. I'm open to offers. The advantage of being able to move on from my point of view is that so quickly after Doctor Who is that I never felt the need to distance myself from the program. So I've always been, if people ask me to do things in Doctor Who, I'll do them because it is, it's a great part of my life. So I've always been happy to go back, whether it's, for Time Crash or for Jodie Whittaker's last story, or...
Which was lovely.
Yeah. Or the Five-ish Doctors, or whatever it is. I've always been very happy to be involved in anything I'm asked to do, and Tales from the TARDIS as well. I just mean, I'm up for anything if they want to figure out. I mean, apparently, I don't really know the details of this, but I'm assured by various people online that now, as a result of the last regeneration, it means we're all still alive somewhere.
Hanging out someplace.
We're all hanging out somewhere, yeah. So David's hanging out somewhere.
Yeah.
I know the bed and breakfast.
Picnicking.
Bed
He's
and breakfast
picnicking.
somewhere. Yeah. But so are we all. So we can all come back now at the age we are and be in Doctor Who. Mind you, I haven't had an offer yet. I haven't had an offer yet.
Well,
Speak truth.
I hope they're watching and your phone rings soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, friend.
Hello. I was wondering. I've been watching a lot of behind the scenes of Doctor Who and everything, and I was wondering if there was any time where you would get frustrated with a scene and you would get mad for doing the multiple scenes multiple times.
You mean repeating a scene?
Yeah.
No, I think you just accept that's part of it. There are so many people who have to think it's okay. So, the camera team have to think it's okay, the sound people have to think it's okay, the director has to think it's okay, producer, etc. So they'll quite often you just have to be resigned to the fact that you may well be doing this scene 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't that common in Doctor Who, oddly enough. It was because usually a technical issue with Doctor Who, which you can't obviously move forward until you've sorted that out. In other things I've done many scenes many more times than that. Because we were short on time and budget with Doctor Who. You necessarily had to move on, so you had to get things, even if they weren't absolutely perfect. You had to move on.
Yeah, I understand that because I have actually had to do multiple takes multiple times for something to get right.
Yeah, you just have to accept that you are not the most important person. The actor is almost the least important person in that setup, and you just have to accept the fact that the people who will say, "I'd like to do it again," will be the camera cameraman, the sound man, the director, whatever it is. You are not in control of that.
Right.
In fact, it's so much so that it's been very, very rare when I'm filming something that I've said, I'd like another take. Because people look at you in astonishment. What? But the actor wants to do another take? Well, all right, we'll do another take. And you know, even when you do that other take, it's almost certain that they're not going to use it because they've liked something already.
Right.
It's now you asking for a take for you, which means the pressure on you to get it right goes up massively high. Because if you cock it up on that retake, it's like they'll go,
You really wasted their
yeah,
time.
you're really wasting my time. We were happy with the previous one. And also, you may do a scene 5 times. In the old days, you used to be able to watch rushes. So they'd send the film away to be developed, it would come back, and then they'd have a session where everyone went into a room and sat and watched the rushes. And sometimes I would go in there, and they'd do the first take, they'd play the first take, and the cameraman was there, the sound person was there, the designer was there, everyone was there, and they'd play the first take, and they'd go, well, why did we do any more? That looked fine to me. And so they very often use the first take. Even though they will do it 7 times, they will very often go back to the first take because that's the one that had the energy. You know, by the time you do it 5 times, 6 times, going back to what I was saying about the Big Finish scripts, you know, it's you lose a certain kind of quality. I don't know what it is. But very often they'll go back to the first take.
And
Well,
thank you, and thank you to everybody. In the interest of time, I know we have another number of people who are lined up right now. That's probably as many as we're going to get to. So I just want to warn anybody else to probably not start queuing up. So go ahead, friend.
Yes, hi. Hello again, Peter.
Hello.
I wanted to ask a question this time on behalf of my friend back there. He's the one in the leather jacket and the long hair. He's my knockoff Adric. I call him Badric. Yes. Going back to the dish of the day, because he really loves Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, we actually came up with this question last night because you were so covered in makeup, you know, your face, and, you know, you had that one hand in the West Country accent.
Yeah.
You were on this sort of table, you know, because were you standing up with your head poking out through the trolley in one arm, or were you completely laid down on your back?
I think I was laid down on my back. I might have had my knees up under me. There may have been a thing cut out. I wasn't standing up in it, so I was not pushing myself along on the trolley. But so I think I was sort of as you saw me actually, crunched over.
Yeah, because we wanted to know, like, you said 2 hours of makeup. We're like, did he have to spend more time just doing his face in one arm, or did he have to, like, have, like...
Well, the whole thing was, most of it was something you just put on, and then they sealed up, you know, the bits around it. So the main part of the body was a sort of prosthetic thing, and that was just covering me, and then they would attach it. So you were being glued in, and then made up around the face mainly, and the arms as well. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again.
Hello.
So I was just wondering, you've probably traveled a lot. Well, I know you've traveled a lot. But do you have a specific place that you like the most that you travel to for any job or just in general?
Do you mean outside of the UK or
Anywhere.
Oh, I don't know really. I haven't been actually that many places, so I feel like I haven't travelled quite enough. My father was from the West Indies. He was from Guyana, and so I feel like I ought to go back there. I've been to Barbados, where a lot of his relatives, and Trinidad, where they still live. But Guyana's not really like a tourist resort.
Not really.
It's
no.
not really a tourist country.
You need to go on a mission. Like, you have to go with and I mean that literally, like, go with missionaries. Like, go on a mission.
Oh, right, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, and we sit down and we watch, we look up, how safe is Guyana? And they go, oh, it can be a bit dodgy. Because it was it's just, it had for many years a kind of communist government, so it was left out of the whole Caribbean, cycle. So I'd like to go there. So there's more places I'd like to go than places I've been, actually, really. Yeah. We very often now, because we don't like to be away from home too much, we will go to like a European city for 3 or 4 days, things like that, see and walk around cathedrals and stuff like that.
Okay.
Fabulous. Thank you. Yes.
Hi, I just wanted to ask what it was like being on Good Omens with David and Ty and Michael.
Weird.
Good weird
it was
or
good.
bad
It was
weird?
good, but it was the first thing I'd done really, which had been. I mean, literally, there was no set.
Yeah.
There was so in the one bit there was a set, but it was just arches. Everything else was sort of blue screen.
Yeah.
So the bit where I'm standing in the desert, and there's just nothing there. I'm just standing on a bit of blue canvas and with blue all around me. And then when you see it on the screen, everything's there.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But yeah, it was very enjoyable. It was very brief, but it was nice to be a part of that.
Yeah, it took me a second to recognize
you. I was going to say, quite often, I told people I was in it, and then they said, well, I couldn't see you in it. Where were you? I said, I was Joe, what are you talking about? Oh, was that you?
Thank you. Yes.
Hi. Before I ask my question, I wasn't a Whovian in my now very distant youth. First time I saw you, I didn't actually see you. You were an Amygdalin cow. And I said, that guy is as funny as hell. I'm going to look up his name in the credits. And that's the first time I heard of your name.
Oh, really?
I found out later that you'd been the doctor. It's like, oh,
yeah.
okay. Anyway, my question is, Androzani is just so wonderful. Your work in it in particular, I know you're going to praise the director and all that, and that's also wonderful. But I was wondering, what was the most satisfying as an actor of all the bits of Androzani? What was the most gratifying at the moment you were doing it?
Oh, I think probably those moments where, you know, the face-to-face with Sharaz Jack, where I'm sort of pleading for the life. And I was also working with this actor who I'd done a comedy series just after I'd left All Creatures Great and Small, Robert Glenister, who's a terrific actor, but we had a terrible time not laughing. Because when we'd made that comedy series, we'd laughed all the way through it. And so just the fact that he was playing this rather serious, rather evil guard or officer.
Indeed.
But yeah, I really loved those scenes, you know, with the Sharaz Jack character. Felt like acting. We cling on to these bits which feel like acting to us and make us feel like we're doing something that's, you know.
Well, you were super. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And our final question in the room.
Yes. What was your feeling on the relationship of the doctor and Adric? Did you like the dynamic? Did you wish you could have, like, was that your guys' call? Like, how did that go down?
With Adric?
Yeah.
I felt like hitting him sometimes. No, it was fine. I mean, the problem with the companions initially was that only one of them wanted to be there. Only Nissa really wanted to be there. Janet wanted, why am I here? Why are we on this other alien planet? Adric was always wanting to get back to E-space.
Yep.
So I think in the end, John realised after about 3 or 4 episodes there were just too many companions, and someone had to go. And
someone had to die, you mean?
Someone had, well, yeah, someone had to. I'm not sure if that was wise, but someone had to go. And initially, for some bizarre reason, we agreed on this, but I didn't specify anything. He said, "Oh, I think we should get rid of Nissa's character." I said, "No, she's the only one who wants to be there. She's the only one that likes me." So then he came up with this idea of killing Adric, which was something that had never been done before.
Right.
But I have to admit. When he first brought it up, I thought it was actually not a bad way to go. And I said to Adric when he found out, it's an impressive way. No one's going to forget it. He didn't really buy into that. So anyway, we did it. I'm not sure now, on reflection, whether we should have killed him off. It wasn't up to me at all, simply because it traumatized a lot of people. Not least, apparently, Russell T. Davis was traumatized by it. But I think he was the obvious one to go because he wasn't bringing a lot. That character wasn't bringing a lot. Maybe that's my fault.
The tension was very noticeable, but it wasn't
Yeah.
real. I mean,
No, it wasn't.
it's acting.
No, it was acting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no,
But it
acting.
was
Yes,
interesting.
definitely.
Yeah.
Oh no, we all got on absolutely fine. But
Yeah.
but there were just too many companions.
Yeah.
And I don't think anything was your fault. All of us Gen Xers were like, there were lots of traumatizing moments in movies and
Yeah.
TV. We're like, okay, and then this killed, and then we watched that, and then that's what they did with the Muppets. Why are they terrifying? So we're all scarred. You're not. So we're all scarred.
Yeah.
So thank you to everyone who put their voice into the room. Thank you to everybody that had a question in our virtual visit. And as we wrap up this episode, don't put your mic down yet, because we want you to give everybody that joined us, what's your final thought for Saturday? I know they'll get a chance to see you on our main stage again, I believe tomorrow. But as you were, we had an opportunity to go. What was some of your favorite moments as that character? But is there another favorite moment throughout your career that you wanted to share with us as we wrap up today?
Favorite moment of my career?
Yes.
Well.
Favorite or memorable? Yeah.
All right. Well, my most memorable moment was working with John Mills, who's a very famous, really famous British actor, Sir John Mills. And by the time I worked with him, and I had we had a nice scene together, and it was just an honor to work with one of those people you've grown up watching in war film after war film, and Ryan's Daughter. He was in all these great movies. But by the time I worked with him, he couldn't see very well at all. And so the only way that we could do the scene, he had peripheral vision, but he had no straight-on vision, or was very, very blurred, was they had to stick a sheet of white paper on my head. So I was working with the great Sir John Mills with a great piece of white card on my head, and I just thought, this is what acting's all about. I'm meeting one of my heroes. And all he can see is a white blob of me. Anyway, that's all.
Well, thank you, everyone. Can you please get a round of applause for Peter Davison, our guest of honor?
Very nice to be here. Thank you for giving me such a great welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us again. Thank you to everybody in the room. Thank you to all of our virtual attendees. And enjoy the rest of Console Room 2025. Thank you, everybody.